a few days' ride from Baldur's Gate many years ago, in my second mission to attain a priceless tome of lore for the monks of Candlekeep. I had navigated around the coastal cliffs at the foot of the Troll Hills, which are mountains, don't let the name fool you. There are just a lot of hills before you get to the very steep parts. In the rather dark and gloomy northern side of the mountains, the peaks drop down quite sharply and plunge into the Trollbark forest. But there is a valley of sorts in between, with many rugged ridges and hidden gullies that are very easy to get lost in. And that is where you will find one of the most dangerous tombs on the entire planet of Toril. Warlock's Crypt is where I unwittingly broke into the lair of not just one of the most ancient and powerful undead wizards in the realms, but also the terrible laboratories and libraries of his many minions, which is stretching that word to its limits, as each of the liches under the Archlich Larock is a lethal master of the arcane arts and a serious threat to any living being. The full accounting of my time in the crypt would fill half a book, so I'll just mention one particular encounter in a ruined and sealed off laboratory that, at the time, I foolishly thought would give me somewhere to rest and hide from the many prowling horrors, but turned out to be the exact opposite of both those goals. Don't let the name of the place fool you either. The Keep of Larock is not some elaborate monument to the dead. It is the resting place of the Netherese flying enclave of Orbidal, which used to mean sanctuary. So as you wander through the grim place, it's full of these lovely statues of angels and doves and flowers, quite at odds with the fact that it's now a fortress of necromancy and wickedness. Its once soaring towers are now blackened and corroded with age and disrepair, appearing like mailed talons clawing at the sky. Inside one of these towers is a failed experiment created by Larock in the early years after the place crash-landed during the literal fall of the Netherese Empire. In Larock's main tower lair, he has chambers that can rejuvenate undead creatures like himself if he ever gets seriously damaged. Well, his first attempt at making one of these chambers was the sealed-off laboratory I broke into. I saw no signs of footprints in the thick dust and dungeon sludge in the corridor and stairs leading to the doorway, and the lock was so rusted I just forced it open with a couple of iron spikes and a pry bar. Inside it was very dark, and there was a lot of fungus growing from stacks of old books, so I wrapped a rag around my mouth and nose in case of toxic spores and crept inside, closing the door behind me. I uncovered my flameless lantern and held it above me to get a better look around, and recoiled at the sight of several bodies, roughly humanoid in shape. They seemed to have collapsed in some state of agony, their limbs twisted and reaching. But the flesh on the things was not decomposed. It was revolting and seemed to writhe and twitch as my lantern illuminated it. Then a great number of eyes and mouths began to bubble out and break open like it was boiling from inside, and the sounds they made were truly terrible. In mere moments, the skeletal remains of the bodies seemed to have the flesh melted off them like hot cheese, and it bunched up into a solid mass of churning eyes and maws of mismatched fangs, tendrils, tongues, partially formed organs, and rubbery limbs flung out from it as it lurched into movement towards me. Where fresh jaws snapped open to yowl and scream, frothing slime spurted out and either sizzled on anything organic it struck or evaporated into stinking mist with pyrotechnic flashes of light. It pooled around the underside of the thing and started to melt the rock under it, which seemed like it was, well, it had been subjected to this treatment before, since the room's flagstones were smooth and swirled like melted grey ice cream. I think I screamed, but it's impossible to hear yourself or others near the cacophony the horror creates. I had just enough time to grab a potion out of my emergency pocket, snap off the stopper, and guzzle it before the thing was close enough to reach me. And then I billowed out into a gaseous form, clinging to the ceiling, wafting as quickly as possible through the crack at the top of the doorway, getting the hells out of there. Thankfully, that door was closed, but knowing that bleating, screaming terror had just alerted any resident undead in the area to my location, I had just enough time to note that the skeletons of the dead people in the laboratory seemed to be made out of some dark metal that gleamed with purple-white sheen, identifying it as some sort of adamantine metal. Who knows what experiment they were performing there, but it went very wrong and turned them all into a gibbering mouther, a creature, if you can call it that, which I never ever want to encounter again. To know that brave and foolhardy adventurers had fought things like that and won, I find it quite remarkable. There was no shame in running from something like that, no shame at all. Much later, after more study of the wizard Larock, I concluded that Larock may have cursed these victims after they performed a ritual successfully, as such a monstrous fate is common to those who are subjected to his potent curses. It was many decades before a single night passed that I didn't wonder when Larock was going to take his revenge on me for violating his rather massive lair. I know damn well he is aware of what I stole from him, but why he has let me live is a mystery to me. First appearing in the hidden shrine of Tamoachan for the first edition Dungeons & Dragons Greyhawk setting in 1979, then splattered across the pages of the Monster Manual 2 for the first edition, the Gibbering Mouther has been one of the core monsters found in every edition of Dungeons & Dragons to this day. It's one of my top 10 monsters of all time, and one that I think every single player of D&D needs to encounter at least once, because they are certainly one of the most horrific creatures imaginable, and they are extremely dangerous, so chances are they will also be the cause of very memorable and spectacular death of a treasured player character, or the harrowing anecdote of a very near miss you can regale your friends with for years to come. Gibbering Mouther is more like a category of the most violently mutated living creatures that can still survive and behave like living beings. They can technically reproduce by asexual fission. After consuming quite a lot of organic material fairly rapidly, they will swell, and a large part of them will move in a different direction from the rest of the mass, tearing itself apart into two fully functional masses. I hesitate to call each one an individual, as it has been reported that bringing two gibbering mouthers together can sometimes result in them simply fusing together to form a much larger gibbering mass. What organs do form enough to be functional can be located nearly anywhere in the body, but the brain tissue clumps mostly in the center of the largest bulk of fleshy mass. The average size of a gibbering mouther is around 3 feet of mass, cubic feet, with a weight of no less than 200 pounds, but this varies quite wildly from the few accounts that I've heard, and the mass of the thing I encountered was, I presume, as much as the body mass of 3 or 4 people, but the way the gibbering mouther consumes things really has a lot to do with it. Ostensibly true omnivores, gibbering mouthers, orbs, and other variants will tend to drain a victim of body fluids first, then tear the body apart and break it down into a slurry mixed with other minerals and such from the environment that their own acid pulls up around them whenever they move. The creature has some interesting habits and quirks, even though it is a horrendous mutation that has no natural origin. It is possible to have a population of the things in a particularly prey-rich and nutrient-abundant environment, such as a jungle or ideally a swamp, as the gibbering mouther tends not to do very well in excessive heat and lots of direct sunlight. They are chemically unstable at the best of times, and ramping up the heat causes even more violent chemical reactions within their strange metabolism. The fluid they spit into the air to cause bright flashes of light is ammonium iodide. It is harmless to them, by the way. There is only one known variant on this, and that's the great gibbering mouther, twice the size of others observed, which did spit actual flames in the pages of the Scarlet Brotherhood, written by Sean K. Reynolds in 1999. And Sean, if you think I'm going to pronounce the name of that thing, you gotta be joking. Alright, I'll give it a go. I'll try using Mayan, which I think you're going for, it being a jungle god king over 1,000 years old. Shushete a la huhush a la zapaminako. Quoting the Dragon Magazine article, a gibbering mouther eats virtually anything, whether the food is animal, vegetable, or mineral. While it prefers animal tissue, preferably still alive and kicking, and vegetable matter, the mouther can also absorb and make use of most metals and minerals. This is a consequence of its strange metabolism. Virtually anything can be incorporated into its makeup or used as a life-giving nutrient. If there is no animal or plant tissue available, the mouther can change its metabolism so as to sustain itself by absorbing other material. It can actually swallow or absorb anything. Mouthers can dissolve and utilize any material except dental enamel, i.e. teeth, glass, diamond, adamantite, and mithril. These materials are resistant to all of the mouther's corrosion secretions and are eventually expelled, so it's possible to contain them in a jar or canister of mithril. With plenty to continually eat, a gibbering mouther is capable of splitting into two smaller individuals once every 3 to 6 months. There will always be one offspring from the split that appears to retain information the original mouther knew, while the other takes a little while to get used to its environment. The stupid one is almost always the gibbering mouther, which moves on quickly to find its own territory, because they are solitary monsters and they do not tolerate any competition at all. Even so, all mouthers will eventually strip all available food sources bare and begin to starve to death if they can't find new hunting grounds. Since they continually eat but reproduce when they gain a certain size, they will always end up starving to death eventually. But there is one exception, the great gibbering mouther. The transformation of a gibbering mouther into the greater gibbering mouther was due to the exposure to a virulent plague virus. But it not only grew to enormous size and formidable intelligence, it also modified its spawning ability to create these little grapefruit-sized gibber spawn that could latch onto a living host parasitically and control sapient victims by whispering compulsions and commands. There is nothing stopping you from modifying any gibbering mouther with some strange and unexpected ability. In fact, I strongly urge you to do so. They are unpredictable mutants after all, so go nuts. Mouthers of all kinds smell very bad. They wallow in a complex drool of acids and solvents and spit ammonium iodide. They eat things and crawl along the ground with those gnawing and babbling mouths, and whatever goes into them also leaves them the same way it was digested. So yeah, they smell so bad you can detect them 20 feet away if the air is wafting in your direction. Victims latched onto, drained and consumed by the gibbering mouther will have a few rounds before their skin is completely dissolved and it starts to break their body tissue, absorbing the nervous system, teeth and eyes into its body intact at first. Then it bonds with the mouther's own body tissue and breaks up, dispersing through the entire mass. But at no point does the victim actually die. So their soul remains within the mouther and they can't be resurrected until the gibbering mouther is killed. Absorption by a mouther invariably causes the victim to go incurably insane. The mind of a victim known to have been absorbed by a mouther can be contacted via telepathy, but it's a fruitless exercise that has a good chance of driving whoever tries it insane as well. The babbling cacophony that the mouther creates is infamous for a reason. In the 5th edition D&D rules for the mouther, babbles incoherently while it can see any creature and isn't incapacitated. Each creature that starts its turn within 20 feet of the mouther and can hear the gibbering must succeed on a DC 10 wisdom saving throw. On a failure, the creature can't take actions until the start of its next turn and rolls a D8 to determine what it does during its turn. On a 1 to 4, the creature does nothing. On a 5 or 6, the creature takes no action or bonus action and uses all of its movement to move in a random determined direction. On a 7 or 8, the creature makes a melee attack against a randomly determined creature within its reach or does nothing if it can't make such an attack. Note that saving on one round does not give immunity to the effect on subsequent rounds, so the adventurer is constantly trying to withstand this effect every round they are within 20 feet of a mouther, which will move towards creatures near it, making a dash action to move 20 feet into melee range. And now the ground around the adventurer is turning to sludge. The ground in a 10-foot radius around the mouther is dough-like difficult terrain. Each creature that starts its turn in that area must make a DC 10 strength saving throw or have its speed reduced to 0 until the start of its next turn. That's 2 different saving throws to avoid becoming a sitting duck so far, but wait, there's more. The mouther has the ability that recharges at the start of the round if the DM gets a 5 or 6 on a D6 roll. The mouther spits a chemical glob at a point it can see within 15 feet of it. The glob explodes in a blinding flash of light on impact. Each creature within 5 feet of that flash must succeed on a DC 13 dexterity saving throw or be blinded until the end of the mouther's next turn. Wisdom save, strength save, and dexterity save. You know, even with a low difficulty class of 10 or better, sooner or later, someone is going to roll badly, and then the gibbering mouther will have them. While it says that the gibbering mouther makes one biting attack, it's much worse than just a little nibble. I think the +2 to hit is charming, considering the adventurer is probably going to be granting the mouther advantage on the attack roll, I would think, being possibly blinded, confused, and sunk down to their knees in a floor turned to chemical quicksand. One creature is just mercy from the game designers. It should be any creature adjacent to the Mouther gets a lot of bites that do a combined 5d6 piercing damage, and if the targets are medium or smaller size, they must make a DC 10 strength saving throw or be knocked prone into chemical quicksand, which should, by the way, game designers, also be inflicting acid damage on anyone who is moving around in it, including the Gibbering Mouther. And by the way, where the hell are the Gibbering Mouther's immunities and resistances? This is just nuts. They have immunity to acid and resistance to poison with a hefty bonus on all constitution saves. At least +6 versus any toxin, and they can't be drowned or asphyxiated or mind controlled. So go ahead and pencil that into your notes, because the 5th edition version is ridiculously nerfed for some insane reason. Take note also that the Mouther has an amoeboid form, which means it can slip through any openings, tiny openings, and extend its body out to cover a much larger area during combat, extending the distances on its gibbering and aberrant ground effects. Challenge rating 2. What the hell were they thinking? This thing can bite up to 6 people at a time and corrodes armor and equipment on contact because it is literally oozing acid all the time. I really don't understand what the writers were trying to do here except make the Mouther weak and less scary. It's supposed to be scary, folks. That's the whole point. The only time a Mouther stops gibbering is when it is eating or there are no edible targets within sight, and it can see reasonably well in all directions, so it should take advantage on initiative rolls and can't really be snuck up on from behind because it has no behind. Chemical alteration of the ground around a Mouther takes a little bit of time. Soil is easy to turn into quicksand and happens during the first round, while turning solid stone to quicksand should occur in the second or third round after the Mouther is aware that there are victims nearby. I say quicksand, but it really is like a chemical sludge. While they can certainly swim with ease, climbing is not an easy or fast feat for the Mouthers, but they can do it. They can also extend themselves up to 7 feet high to grab things above them or get a better view over an object. Most Mouthers encountered will be the result of foul sorcery, some sort of terrible curse, a horrific alchemical accident, someone being exposed to the raw energies of the far realms, or the summoned spawn of a demon lord, probably made up of foolish cultists who willingly sacrificed themselves some time ago. There is a rumor that the Gibbering Mouthers are the degenerated offspring of gibbering orbs, which were created by the Great Mother worshipped by the beholders. Gibbering orbs are very bad news. They are huge in size, they have a reach attack, they can fly at 20 feet per round, they have eyes raised like a beholder, they can swallow large or smaller victims whole, and they are tremendously intelligent and capable villains who are usually chaotic evil, but not always. So basically they're a cross between a very formidable beholder and a gibbering Mouther. Very nasty. In Forgotten Realms lore, 129 years ago during the Living Gem War, the wizard Shond Tharovin was cursed by the archmage Yund Shalshimir and permanently changed into a gibbering Mouther over 12 miles long, sacrificing his life to do so. Shond vowed revenge and left his city of Shameda to enter the ocean. The Shond Mouther eventually settled on the Singing Rocks in the Trackless Sea, where he planned the demise of his enemies. I strongly advise everyone to stay very well clear of the Singing Rocks. Pretty much anything named Singing Anything is going to turn out to be bad in the realms, unless it's a waterfall. But even so, be careful. Thanks for joining me and learning more about the Gibbering Mouther. My name is AJ Pickett, and as always, I'll be back with more for you very soon.